It's good to see all your smiling faces here. Hope everybody had a refreshing break. And we're ready to jump into our next half of the meeting. And to take care of session number 3, we have a panel discussion with some panelists who have had leadership at various levels of Toastmasters International. You'll hear more about them today, and our moderator for this panel discussion, who will let you know about them and let you ask some questions later, will be David Wells.
Thank you, Darren. And thank you for everybody that is showing up here for this training. We wanted this training to be a little bit different than it has been in the past. And one of the different aspects is a panel discussion, the value of Toastmasters. And I want to talk to you really quick. I want to introduce our panelists, give you a little bit of background on them, and then I'll ask questions. And if we have time left over, we'll open it up to the field. So our first panelist is a CPA. She's been in Toastmasters for 10 years. She was introduced to Toastmasters by a supervisor at a previous job. Her highest education level she has achieved is a distinguished Toastmaster. She's been in office as a district director. One thing that you don't know about her, or may not know about her, is that she is serving as a first-time club coach this year for the KUMC Toastmasters, and that is distinguished Toastmaster Clarisse Maceberg. Beautiful, good job. Thank you, Clarisse, for helping us out. Our second panelist is an IT project manager. He has been a Toastmasters for 15 years. Who introduced him to Toastmaster was a Chief Master Sergeant in McConnell Air Force Base. His highest education level is a DTM, Distinguished Toastmaster, and he has had a position of regional advisor. An interesting fact about him, he enjoys photography. And our second panelist on the panel is Distinguished Toastmaster Rob Christensen. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Our last, excuse me, my last but not least panelist has been in the background. He's retired career in the consumer goods marketing. He has been a Toastmaster for 26 plus years. His coworker was told that he needed to go to Toastmasters, kind of voluntold type thing. He is highest level, he's a competent Toastmaster. Something that you might not know about him, he was a boxer in college. And our final Toastmaster of the panelist is Rick Chandler. All right, thank you guys. All right, our first question, we have 3 rounds that we're going to ask. And the first question, or the first section, is communication and leadership in personal life. Second one is going to be communication and leadership in your professional life. And then we have 3 generic questions. And then, like I said, if we have time afterwards, we're going to open it up to the field. And as a reminder, panelists, if you keep your answers to 2 to 3 minutes, I know sometimes it's hard, but dealing with communication and leadership in our personal life, our first question is, how has Toastmasters helped you communicate in everyday life and can you give an example, please? Mr. Rob Christensen.
Sure, thanks. So how has Toastmasters helped me to communicate in everyday life? One thing that I think that I realized about being a Toastmasters is sometimes you learn things that you say like, wow, I thought I already knew that, but you really didn't know it until you like experienced it. And I think I always knew that I shouldn't just ramble on and on and on and on. But until I became a Toastmaster, when I put together my first couple speeches, it was difficult to fill 5 to 7 minutes. But then as I started talking about things where I had expertise, and you talked about like IT project management or other things like that, I can just kind of keep going if I'm not careful, right? I can just talk and talk and talk. And so the skill of knocking it down to 5 to 7 minutes or being more concise or more brief with my thoughts. And the real important lesson is I have yet to find a single boss who wants to hear me talk for 10 minutes. Right. When they have a question, they don't want to hear a long drawn out answer. They want to hear what's happening. You know, what are you doing about it? What do you need? Get out of my office. Right. That they want the brief answer. And in Toastmasters, we learned to be more brief, and that has made a very positive difference to me in how I communicate every day.
Great, thank you. Our second question, in what way would you say Toastmasters has helped you lead outside of your meeting? Mr. Rick Chandler.
The first thing it taught me was how to hit unmute. I'm going to send out a spreadsheet later, which goes through all the different skills that I've applied in Toastmasters, because it got to be so long, and I want to bore everybody. As Rob said, no one wants to hear me talk for half an hour. But the first one I'll tell you is running an effective meeting. That was one of the first things that bosses started pointing out. And you're going to get tired of hearing this. Toastmasters helped me retire early because it just made so much more money. So in our company, meetings didn't start on time, they didn't end on time, and what happened in the middle was usually a waste of time. And so when I brought that discipline to the meetings I was running, and by the way, I started raising my hand, that's one of the things. You're going to have these skills. You've got to raise your hand, just like being a club officer. You got to raise your hand at work. And people started coming to my meetings, and we got more things done, and I just kept getting more and more responsibility because my meetings went well. And all I did was exactly what we do in a Toastmasters meeting. Start on time, end on time, have an agenda, stay on focus, make sure people were prepared, volunteer, all those little things. So to me, it was all about meetings first.
Great, thank you. All right, last question. Are there any other positions or organizations you work with where you used your Toastmaster abilities or your skills, Clarisse?
Yes, absolutely. The one that I want to talk about is serving as the finance chair for a nonprofit organization where I'm a volunteer. As you can imagine, there's a lot of overlap between that and Toastmasters. We have monthly meetings. We have an agenda, which I create. I lead the meetings. I have to manage volunteers, organize events. Does this sound at all familiar, like things we do in Toastmasters? So there is a lot of overlap, and I'm able to take the skills that I've learned in Toastmasters and use that to be more effective. And as the committee is more effective, the finance committee, then we are more effective for our organization as well. So it's not just a matter of managing the meetings effectively, but bringing in funds and managing the finances of our organization so it can do good work in the community. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, the next section that we have is communication and leadership in your professional life. What would you say is the best aspect of Toastmasters, and how has it enhanced your professional life? Rob.
I think the best aspect for me, there's probably like 16 best aspects or whatever, but really that I could almost, depending on when you ask me or something like that, but practice, being able to practice is one that I've been able to use over the years. And when I first joined, I talked about that chief, my chief when I was stationed at McConnell. We were discussing getting ready to retire from the military, and we were talking, and I think I was talking about interview skills. He said, Rob, you should join Toastmasters. And that's where that started. And when I joined, that was my goal, was to learn how to handle a civilian corporate job interview. That was going to be a whole new thing for me to do. And being able to practice some of those questions, I mean, the icebreaker, is the tell me about yourself question, right, of the program. And so all of those different ways I could do that. And my club, my first club, the what's now called the Aero Achievers down in Wichita, were, they were so extremely helpful in like throwing table topics at me or giving me ideas for speeches where I could talk about certain topics, and being able to practice those interview skills. When I got to the point of doing the interviews, I was so much more comfortable than I could have possibly been otherwise. If I would have went in cold or practicing in front of the mirror, so to speak, would not have been nearly the same for me. So having that capability, and then staying in Toastmasters after getting hired, I do a lot of training at work, or not a lot. I do kind of intermittently. I do training at work, and I also do training as part of Toastmasters now too. But also being able to get different points of view. So I'll give a speech on some type of IT project management topic in my poor club. They have to listen to this, but it'll be folks that will may or may not be in my field, and right, and the ones that are in my field will still give me feedback that like, hey, I may have missed something. The ones that weren't in my field will tell me like what made absolutely no sense to them. And the fact is, even at work, not everybody that's in my field is in my field in the same way I am. That makes sense. Other IT people do totally different things. And so I try to get all project management jargony with them, and it doesn't go well. So I practice that at Toastmasters, and I find out where those errors are. And then when I go to work, I knock it out of the park the first time versus, like I said, not being comfortable or not being ready. So like I said, just that ability to practice and try things out that are really important to me somewhere else in my club.
That's great. That is awesome. Thank you very much. Okay, next question. Is there a tool or a technique you learned from Toastmasters you use in your occupation? What would it be and how did you use it? Rick, you mentioned a little bit in the last session or question, so why don't you expand on that, please?
I'm going to give you two. One is the elevator speech. I'm a division director, and my area directors challenged me to come up with elevator speeches on the value of Toastmasters. And I just put the one on chat that I use for Toastmasters in general. And I have one for each one of my clubs. But it's, I just start with the mission of a Toastmasters club. Toastmasters is a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping members improve their communication and leadership skills in a supportive, positive environment. And then I go into the benefits that it gave me. Toastmasters helped me develop leadership skills such as running an efficient and productive meeting or selling my ideas for projects to senior management. It also helped me develop the communication skills to motivate a sales team, sell myself in an interview, and become a storyteller across the country. And now I'm learning how to present in the Zoom environment. So after over 25 years in Toastmasters, I stay in because of the wonderful people and supportive environment. So my point is, I had to go think about how do you do a good elevator speech, and that's something that we do all the time because we're always pitching ideas. And the 3 elevator speeches that I put together, Terry Ann will put out later. As for, I'm going to kind of build on something Rob said about making sure people understand what you're doing. Oftentimes you'll be asked, hey, can you give us an update on what's going on in Division L, for instance? Well, I'm going to step back and say, as you may not know, but Division L is within District 22, we have districts, divisions, areas, because a lot of people don't know that kind of information. So giving that orientation, and where did I learn that? In our clubs, when you're a grammarian or timer, you don't just say, at table topics, I hold up the green at 1. I hold up no, we talk for 10 to 15 seconds on why is it important to be timer? Why is it important to be the ah counter? And that teaches people who are newer to the organization to do that brief orientation, to give that overview. And it also really reinforces to our club members, this isn't just some stupid exercise of holding up cards that go green, yellow, or red. It's time is what our life is made of. And if we waste time, et cetera, et cetera. And I got to tell you, having big on long agendas, everybody ahead of you is going to go over time. They are going to screw up the agenda. And when you're given half an hour and you speak for 15 minutes and have a clear, concise message, they are going to ask you back over and over and over again because you're the guy who got them just a little bit back towards time. And it makes all the difference in the world. It makes you a hero. But like I say, I have a whole list and I'll be able to publish those later. But the 2 skills I mentioned, David, are just giving that orientation so people are all on the same page. And then just recently, just how to do a good, strong 40-second elevator speech.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. That's really good. And here's where the rubber meets the road. And this is what I believe anyway. How has being a Toastmaster earned you money, Clarisse?
I would say it has definitely earned me money, and the Toastmasters has helped me advance in my career, which has led to opportunities to make more money. Toastmasters, as we've already heard about, is useful in terms of selling yourself during an interview, which I've also found that to be very helpful, just the confidence to be able to answer interview questions and really get my point across in a more concise way. And as you heard when David introduced me, I'm a CPA, so I don't really do sales or presentations very much. But what I do is I need to listen very well to what people are telling me. And that's a skill that I have certainly developed in Toastmasters. in terms of evaluation, but also in other meeting roles, just being able to listen and understand what the message is and be able to take in that information. It's also helped me in terms of confidence, in terms of being able to advance. So at this point, when I became a manager, I feel like a lot of that is attributable to skills that I've learned in Toastmasters, being able to develop people, being able to lead projects. Those are all skills that I've been able to practice in Toastmasters, and it's definitely a safer place to do it. At least it feels that way, right? Compared with doing it in the workplace, where sometimes the stakes feel a lot higher.
Absolutely. And I liked where somebody had put earlier that Toastmasters is a place where you could fail. It is a safe environment. And that's exactly what we tell people when they come visit. If you need to practice, bring it here. We'll give you some feedback on how to improve. And then you could be a rock star at work like y'all. Very
Hey, David,
good.
can I jump in
Yes.
here for a second? You know, when we were talking with the presidents, we talked about themed meetings. Job interviews would be a great themed meeting, because
Oh, I like that.
while you may not be looking for a job today, you're gonna be looking for a job sooner or later. So the idea of just how to practice, whether it be an elevator speech and have people work on that, or have someone come in and give those job interview questions as table topics, that would be a great themed meeting.
I agree. I wrote that down.
And you can get away with that with your corporate club too, by just talking about internal interviews.
Right, sure. Right,
Exactly.
and you can almost laugh about it and everybody get a chuckle, but yeah, sure.
And I will tell you, since I'm retired military, Rob's retired military, I don't know if all the branches do board quarter of the, the airman of the quarter or whatever boards there are, but it has a great place to practice. Okay, moving into the next section. This is just a generic overall. Is why should someone pursue leadership positions or opportunities in Toastmaster International? How does that help them, and what would be a benefit? Rob, you've been a regional advisor. Can you explain a little bit what brought you from where you are, from the very beginning to where you are now as a leader in Toastmasters?
Sure. I think it's probably very different for everybody, how they get moving forward. And there are some people that kind of go into it with the end in mind, where they're like, oh, I want to be like the international president, or I want to be whatever. For me, when I first got voluntold to be VP of Education, I actually just returned from a deployment. I'd only been a member of Toastmasters about 10 or so months, and I'd spent 5 of those on a deployment. And they said, hey, why don't you be VP Ed, in the new year? That was the one empty spot on the whiteboard for the officer spots. So once I filled that role, I started to understand what it meant to be able to give back to the organization really in a more meaningful way, because you do it as an evaluator, as a timer, et cetera. You're helping others improve while you're also doing your own improvement. So the growth is there and the opportunity to give back. And somebody mentioned something about area director, and actually it was in fact, come think of it, it was our area director from that year that told me that I should consider it for the future. He didn't really try to push me into it. He just sort of mentioned it, but watching him work and interacting with him directly and like doing the area visit report and, that kind of thing made me realize, well, this is a way I can help out, more people and achieve that growth again, a little bit more opportunity to improve my leadership skills. And so that's what every role led to. And then after being district director, after I was, I passed as district director for a couple of years, kind of got somebody tap on the shoulder, said, you should really look at that region advisor role. That's something that you might be really good at. And so I took that opportunity. And for those that don't know, Kim Myers is our current region advisor. The region advisor role supports multiple districts within a geographic region. And if you kind of draw a U over the middle of the United States going up into Canada, that's region 4. So multiple districts around this part of the country, being able to do training and support them. And what I found is, like I said, again, that growth opportunity, doing those training in other environments, speaking up in Canada or up in Minneapolis or over in Denver or other places, different Toastmasters, even that close geographically, still cultural differences start to emerge. And so you learn a lot about dealing with a lot of different just type of situations. And so that growth opportunity is really amazing. And so it's not necessarily for everybody. You don't have to think, well, man, I don't want to be a region advisor, so I should not be an area director. There's no reason to not go to the next level, see how that feels, and then make a decision later about the level after that. You don't have to think about some sort of long-term like I'm going to do everything and be in every role. So just being a club officer can be a tremendous opportunity, and also, again, help your club to be successful as well. And that's what I felt. Like I said, the personal growth and then the opportunity to give back are the two things that have really made a difference for me.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. All right. And here's a question that everybody has on their mind. And, I drank the Kool-Aid the very first meeting. And the reason why I say that is because I went to a meeting. It was 6:30 in the morning in Rapid City, South Dakota. And the guy says, if you come, I'll buy your breakfast. And the environment there was just amazing. And I've been in Toastmasters ever since. Have I missed in a meeting? Absolutely. But I have drank the Kool-Aid. I understand what the purpose is behind Toastmasters. So Clarisse, what keeps you coming back to Toastmasters?
There are so many things that keep me coming back. When I originally joined Toastmasters, as you mentioned in my introduction, I was introduced to it by a supervisor, and this was actually at my first job out of college. She suggested it for me to be more confident in meetings and to be just more comfortable in communication. I thought I would go for a few months and achieve that goal and hopefully become more comfortable. But like you, I went to the meeting and I was really hooked. I have such a good time in my club. I keep learning. And now, like Rob mentioned, it's also about developing other people too. This year, I'm a first-time club coach, so that's a learning opportunity for me, but that's also an opportunity for the club that I'm able to work with. I hope that I'm able to share some knowledge with them. I'm also serving again as an area director this year, and I'm mentoring somebody else who wants to be an area director. So again, that's fun for me to be the area director, but it's also a great opportunity to feel like I'm able to share that knowledge and show that role to somebody else who's interested in doing that in the future. Also, the Pathways program is new, and I think it's fun. I mean, I know there are challenges with it. I know it's an adjustment, but after several years in Toastmasters, it's fun to take on that new challenge, do some different projects. I'm working on a podcast for the first time ever, which is my Pathways project. I don't know that I would ever have just said, you know what, let me make a podcast. That probably would not have occurred to me, but I'm doing that, and I'm actually collaborating with that on another Toastmaster. And that is where the fun comes in. It's fun to meet all the people that we get to meet in Toastmasters. I've met so many amazing people who are good friends, and I probably would not have met them if I wasn't a member of Toastmasters and encountered them in that way. And then the opportunities that we have for that. So for all of those reasons, that's why I'm still here and still coming back.
I have a follow-up question because I know that a couple of years ago, you were the district director. How is that, people would look at going from a district director going down to an area director. That's a step back in leadership. How does that, can you answer that question? Do you think it's a step down in leadership, or tell me what you think?
I do not think it's a step down. I think they're different roles. District director is a much bigger picture role. There's a different focus. Area director is, I'm much closer to the clubs. I get to spend a lot more time with the clubs in my area and really get to know those people. And neither of those roles has ever been a bad experience for me. I've had a great experience in every role I've ever served in as Toastmasters. I just think the focus is different and some of the interactions are different. So I don't feel like it's a step down at all. I love being an area director. And I'm learning this time too, right? I mean, it's not like it was a one and done. I did it several years ago. This is my second time doing it, and I'm still learning and hopefully still improving and bringing more to the role as I do it again.
Hey, nice job. All right, rounding off this session, and then we'll open it up. Looks like we'll have about a few minutes left over before the session ends. Rick, what has been your most rewarding experience within Toastmasters?
Oh,
and
that's
why
easy.
would you say that?
I joined, frankly, David, you said you drank the Kool-Aid. I did not. I came because of this friend. I joined Heartland Toastmasters. They met at a Pizza Hut, and at Pizza Hut, they had an all-you-could-eat buffet for $4.99. So I didn't drink the Kool-Aid. I ate the pizza. It was a way for me to get out of the office every week and just eat too much pizza. And I would literally pile it so high trying to hide from being called on. But when I started seeing the differences at work, and more importantly, when other people started seeing the differences, like I said, when I got asked, hey, give us an update on the project, and gave more of a well-rounded answer to that, and people noticed that. When someone was leading a meeting poorly, and I said, let me give it a try. Next thing you know, they're handing you the leadership of that meeting. I started as a financial person and moved into marketing, where you have to present projects to senior management and the sales teams and get cross-functional teams on board. And that's all comes from Toastmasters, helped me make a lot of money. So that's why I started. But the reason I stay is because of Brenda Lowe, Fred Washington, Carol Evans, Barb Grenade, Mark, well, maybe not Mark Moran, Vicki Johnson. You know, these are all people that I'm not going to meet in other walks of life. Mike Edwards is a guy I would consider a friend now that I would never have met because he's up in Leavenworth and, you know, a very different type of job. So the reason I stay isn't because I'm retired. It's not about jobs and trying to make more money. It's because when I get to meet people like that, you know, I'm on a different way. And if you'll indulge me, another club I was in, our club president had known him 5 or 6 years in the club. I didn't know him that well. Had a heart attack on his 40th birthday and died. Terrible, right? And like I said, I didn't know him that well. There were 14 Toastmasters at his funeral. And as people started to give the eulogies about this guy, none of them Toastmasters, we all knew those stories because this guy had told us those over the years. And you realized we knew him at a level that we didn't really know that we knew him. We knew about his aspirations, how he looked up to his father and those sort of things. So it sounds trivial. You get to know people in a way that most people don't. I know that if I gave my icebreaker again, my wife would look at me and go, I didn't know that, you know? So I just think you get to know some wonderful people, and that's why I keep coming.
That's awesome.
And David, I'm gonna throw out a challenge here because I see in the chat these success stories coming through. What I'd like everybody to do is take a moment in your club or your meeting and write down some of those success stories. Go to the Facebook page, put them out there. And let's be honest, we're all introverts. 99.9% of us who join are introverts. And we've been told, don't brag about yourself. Bullshit. Go brag about what you've done, you know, that's really been impressive and how Toastmasters helped you do it. I mean, I can literally talk about how people would say, hey, I want you to come to our sales meeting. Why? Because you're not going to be boring. You're not going to be bad. You're going to be on time. You're going to be prepared. So I would ask you, go write down some of those success stories because you've all got them. And I think we'll be impressed about how many great success stories we'll have.
All right, beautiful. All right, we have about, I would say, what, 20 minutes? So are there any questions from the field for our panelists? Or everybody just wants to get done quick?
I will ask a question. How do you motivate the people who are coming to your club and using it more as a social, I got nothing else to do tonight, and motivate them to realize this is personal growth?
I'll field one aspect of that and say that we're not an organization that just has one target audience, right? So I like to think there's kind of like 3 broad groups of people. There's the communicators, there's the leaders, and there's the networkers. And you could probably split that out more or come up with some other variations, however you want to call it. That's okay too. And some of those go together. Sometimes you need to do all 3 at once to be successful. If you've got members in your club who just want to be the networkers, I'd push back on saying that you need to fix that. You may not need to fix it. But you may want to help them understand their place in the club so they're not just a complete draw where they're doing nothing but showing up, or, you know, they're never participating. You want them to be involved, but kind of take it a piece at a time. How do you get them involved with one thing? How do you move them up from nothing to timer or from nothing to table topics master, and, you know, work on it from there. And just, you're not going to get everybody. In fact, you're not going to get everybody to DTM. Everybody that wants to achieve things doesn't want to be a DTM. Some people just want to get level 2, and that's their comfort level. That's what they need. So Remember to meet them where their needs are. Excuse me.
Carrie Ann, if I could give you an exercise to try in your club, we did this in several clubs. It's a Post-it note exercise, and on each Post-it note, you write a word that you think describes your club, and you do 2 of them. And so everybody posts their words. And, once again, this is when you're in person, but it's the same kind of thing. You can put them on chat however you want to go, and you start grouping those words together. And you'll have some clubs that are much more oriented to personal development. And I was in lunchtime clubs, and that's what we were all about. So I did that for like 17 years, personal development clubs. And when I went to California, I joined a club, and they were all about fun. I thought that was the craziest damn thing I'd ever heard of in my life. Fun? We're not here to have fun. We're here to grow and develop. But they were all about fun. So I had to adjust my expectations for that different kind of club. And, it was a club that I thought I was going to quit because that's not why I came to Toastmasters. And then when I moved from California and I left that club, they left me in tears because they were saying such wonderful things. But it was just find out what your club's all about. So do the Post-it notes. You'll see some people are about development, some people are about the social community aspect, and some people are just looking for a support network. And then really find out what your club's really all about.
Clarisse, do you want to add to that?
Sarah's asking me, I didn't want to have fun. We had fun in growing, but I was just like, yeah, no, I didn't join Toastmasters to make friends. I had plenty of friends. I joined to make money. It was all about dollars. And like I said, 25 years later, it's changed into it's now about the friends. And you're one of them, Sarah.
Clarisse, do you want to add to that?
I can add a little bit. I really agree with what's been said. I think it's important to understand why is the person there. And some people are there because they really want to practice their speaking, and that's what they really want to work on. We have a lot of people in my club, not at the moment, but we've had many over the years that they want to practice English as a second language, and that's really their goal. So it's just important to understand why is the person there. And we too have people who are just looking to socialize more. They are maybe done with their career. They don't care so much about giving presentations, but they like coming and learning and being around other people, and that's okay too. In my club, we assign roles. So I know that's a little bit different than a lot of clubs where people are signing up. So we don't have the struggle of people not fulfilling roles because everybody has a role, and we're a smaller group. So basically everybody has a role at every meeting, but we encourage people to take whatever the next step is for them. So maybe that's working on a new path, or maybe that's moving into a leadership role, or maybe that's taking on an officer role for the first time. It just really depends on what the goals of that person are.
I did want to say, Clarisse, you mentioned about a path. Everybody that's on here, I'm probably preaching to the choir, but I just want to make sure that you're aware, Toastmasters International gave you a free path if you signed up your membership before a certain period. I've actually started my 4th path, so take advantage of the techniques. And I'll tell you what, when I first started Toastmasters, January 1st, 2009, I did the book, and I loved the book because I had it. It was hard. I gave it to somebody. They did the evaluations in the book. Pathways isn't that way. I wasn't necessarily reluctant to Pathways. I was irritated because of the technology that we had, the challenges that we had. So I went and bought the books again and started off by that way. But now as time goes, we get better and better with Pathways. So I like that aspect. Anybody else have any questions from the field?
David, this is Andre Red. I have a question.
Yes, sir.
3 excellent panelists, 3 excellent Toastmasters, 3 excellent people. Tell us about a time while you were in Toastmasters when you came to that place where you just said, I just can't take it anymore. And what turned it around, and what did you learn about yourself in the process?
We'll start off with Clarisse, and then we'll go Rick, and then Rob.
Sure. So I don't have a specific occasion that I'm thinking of to share, but sometimes I do think to myself, like, oh, I've got to go to this club meeting. Like, I'm busy at work, and it's one more thing I've got to fit into my week. I'd rather spend the evening sitting at home. But when I go to the meeting, and this happens every single time, I never regret it. Once I go and I start talking to my fellow club members and I hear the speeches, whether I'm a speaker or not, right, or an evaluator, whether I'm more just there as a timer, or I have a more active role. Every time I feel like I took something away from this meeting. Either I learned something, or I was able to help someone, or even I just got to socialize and see some people I haven't seen in a while. Every single time that I go to the meeting and I put in the effort, I always have a good time. And that's the easiest way for me to shake off that feeling. Because yes, sometimes I think, oh, it's just one more thing that I need to do in my week. But it's so valuable. And when I make the time and actually do it, it pays off.
Andre, I'll almost echo Clarisse, just get too busy at work. There were times I was too busy, felt like I couldn't devote the time, et cetera, et cetera. So I would drop out, not start missing meetings, and then eventually not renew my dues. And then when I started catching myself saying or not having a clear, cohesive answer to a question at work, I would drag my butt back to the Pizza Hut and start eating again. So, no, all kidding aside, it's like a gym membership. If you don't exercise that muscle, that skill, it will go away. And I just wanted to keep exercising. And for me, it was job interviews and things at work.
Nice. Rob?
In my district director year, I actually changed jobs and moved from Wichita up to Overland Park. And when I came up here, I had a little bit of extra time, and I was visiting a lot of clubs, and I ended up joining a few, and I ended up in like 3 or 4 clubs at one point. And then I kind of got like what Clarisse said, where like, man, your week gets really packed in. And so I ended up trimming down to 1 for at least about a year, I think. And the reason why I did it, I just thought, you know what, it's not that I don't enjoy each time I go, but it is at some point you do need more sleep, right? And so you kind of have to figure out a balance. And so rather than balance to 0, which I didn't think would be a good balance, I balanced down to 1 club. And I was in 1 club for about a year, and then decided to go ahead and go back to a second club. Once, kind of like Rick said, I started realizing I wasn't speaking as often as I enjoyed speaking and getting the opportunities. And there were things at work going on that I didn't have time to practice with my 1 club. So by joining a second, now I have a little bit more opportunity. So that's probably the closest I got. I don't think I ever got to the point of saying I was going to walk away, but even that, I've known some people that have dropped out for a year of Toastmasters, and then they've said, hey, can I come back? I'm like, well, yes, you can always come back. I mean, certainly we'd love to have you back. So, that was just one of those feelings that I guess that you miss it and you bring it back. But sometimes it does get a little overwhelming if you let yourself get too deep into it.
And then David, also every 4 years I struggle with Toastmasters, because during the political season, all the ahs and ums and so's and the terrible sport newscasters, I kind of want to get out of the Toastmasters mode, because I just want to scream at these politicians and even newscasters, not because of their policies. You can say stupid stuff, just don't say with ahs, ums, so's, these, So every 4 years I struggle.
Press secretaries are normally the worst. All right, anybody else? We have time for probably 2 more questions, depending on the length of experience of the answer.
David, I have a question.
Yes.
So for our panelist, what's one thing you could say to convince all of us listening to take that next step and become a district leader and get a hold of Stephanie and express your interest?
Okay, let's do Rick, and then Rob, and then Clarisse. Oh, I'm sorry, no, Clarisse, then Rob. Go ahead.
I'm going to give a different viewpoint than my counterparts. I did not want to be a district officer. I've avoided it for 22 years, 23 years. I always competed, so I liked contests, and that was always my way to stay out. I didn't mind being a club officer, but didn't have any desire. Once again, I joined to make money. It wasn't for this other stuff. When Pathways came along, won't lie, I was frustrated, so it was either get out or help make it better. And it was the smartest decision I ever made, because what I've done is gone and seen more clubs, and I've really enjoyed all those wonderful people. We get through the Pathways stuff. There's certain things I love about it. I get frustrated because it could be improved, but I love Pathways in a number of different areas, and I really love working with all the different people in the different clubs.
Very nice. Clarisse?
I want to speak to the people who are maybe on the fence, people who think that they might want to be a district leader, or they're intrigued by what they're hearing, but they may be thinking, I'm not sure about this, or I'm not sure that I can do that role. I am probably that person too. I was not somebody who immediately said, like, yes, please sign me up to be the club's vice president of education. Please sign me up to be an area director. Those are things I really, really want to do. There were people in my club who encouraged me to do those roles and said, hey, I think you would be really good at this. Would you consider this? And so it wasn't necessarily that I immediately stepped forward, but it was people encouraged me to do that. And then when I was in those roles, there were people who mentored me, both people I sought out, but then also people who said, let me share some advice with you, or let me help you with that. And I got to meet a lot more people that way as well, and really grow myself in some ways I didn't expect. I certainly didn't join Toastmasters to be involved in leadership. I didn't even know that was a feature of Toastmasters. That came later. So that's what I would really say is if you're somebody who's intrigued by the idea, or you're thinking that might be something I could do, I would encourage you to take that step and at least reach out to somebody and find out more about it. Don't be afraid to investigate it. And also don't be afraid to see if you could serve as an assistant if you're maybe not ready, or you feel like you're not ready to serve as an area director, say. You could be someone's assistant and get all of that knowledge and be ready then to serve in that role.
Rob.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see what year I got my DTM, but you can't. Just so stop squinting. All right, it's just well, when you achieve any of these levels, or when you complete any of these awards, they're with you forever. So my DTM, I think I finished it in 2009, if I'm not mistaken. But in the end, I know that there are some folks that think, well, the only reason to be an area director is if I want to be a DTM. Well, that's not really true. I mean, the two things don't automatically link up. It's not that, oh, you have to become a DTM, or that you have to do a certain role to get there. There are a lot of things that help support the organization, support members, things that other people have done to support you, some things you may not even realize were being done in the background that you can help out with without saying, well, if I'm not on the path of DTM, then I don't want to mess with it. And I've known people that didn't want to do things unless it led to credit. And in the end, when you look back on it, I can just tell you that at that time, I kind of felt that way too. When I got my DTM, I was like, oh, good, I needed it now. I didn't want it next year. I wanted it this year. But looking at it today, does it really matter if it was 2009 or 2010 or 2012 even? Not really. So what really mattered were the two things I talked about earlier, the growth and the ability to give back. And those exist in a whole lot of places. Terry Ann right now being Zoom master does not get DTM credit for the role she's doing, and she has been working super hard. There's other ways that we recognize people for their hard work, don't get me wrong, but that one DTM credit is something that's just its own thing by itself. So we have roles like that, and Samantha serving in a role like that as well. And I forget who else. I'm sorry if I missed anybody, but I know those two for sure are two of the prime Zoom masters today. But just doing roles like that, those roles didn't even exist before, but we needed people doing those type of things even with in-person events. And that doesn't mean that Terry Ann must become an area director and must become a division director. She could be Zoom master for a couple of years and then go to not be in a role for a year and then go on to do something totally different, and et cetera, et cetera. Don't feel like there's any one path you have to follow when it comes to leadership. Find what works for you, or what your next what would be challenging for you. And maybe again, challenging might be just being the person that monitors the chat for this and being able to help us sort through what comes in the chat in these kind of events. And then after you do that, you go, well, that was actually pretty easy. Maybe I could go ahead and be one of the Zoom masters next time, or whatever. So talk to your club about what's needed. Talk to your area director. Talk to Stephanie, because she is going to ask you about being an area director and being those more formal roles. But again, there are the other less formal roles that exist, and Clarisse touched on a couple of those too that are really important. So just realize there's more opportunity than you probably realize. Just take a look at what you can do and what you may want to do, and then find out if you want to keep going or not. And no one's going to be mad at you for doing one thing and then not doing another thing.
Okay, I'm going to throw an audible out there because we have about 5 minutes left. And instead of asking one more question, I am going to ask each one of our panelists to leave us one tip that they would like for us to get out of Toastmasters specifically today. And I'm going to start with Clarisse.
I would say if I had to leave one tip, it is you don't have to do it alone. There are lots of people in Toastmasters, whatever your role is, they've done it before and they would love to help you and give you advice.
Rob?
Sorry, I muted there. understand your why, right? Either why you joined or why you're staying. Know what it is you're trying to achieve so that, and make sure others know, somebody in your club understand what you're trying to do. Because like when I talked about joining so that I could get better job interviews, if I didn't tell anybody that, nobody would give me good advice on how to use the existing program for that. They would just keep saying, oh, do good speeches, have fun, whatever, until they knew why, and then they'd help me out. So no one can help you if they don't know why you're here. So share that and learn that about your other club members as well, so that you can give them help or find someone else that can give them help, because we don't all know everything, but we can help each other find that right resource.
All right, Rick, you have about 3 minutes.
I'll give you two then. One is tell your club to don't be afraid to break the rules. Sometimes we think we have to give a 5 to 7 minute speech, but we've got that 30-minute speech we're practicing for work, and we only take a piece of it. Ask for the 30 minutes. 9 times out of 10, your clubs are going to say, sure. Practice the whole 30-minute speech and get the feedback. And the second is for our officers, don't be afraid to be silly. Don't be afraid to have fun. And I'll give you an example. Andre and I visited a KCRC the other day, and they were having a meeting, and the meeting was going fine. And they asked us to give out awards, and I gave Andre the award for the most likely to go overtime. He started crying accepting this award, and he went on thanking everybody, literally everybody, so that his table topics went for 3 minutes overtime, proving why he should deserve this award. We got off the call, and they were like, this is one of the best meetings we've had in a long time. And Andre started talking again. So don't be afraid to be silly. Ask yourself, WWARD, what would Andre Red do?
All right. Oh, we have a couple of minutes. And I don't think it's ever bad to end early, but one last session or one last opportunity for somebody to ask a question, since we have a couple.
I don't have a question, but I do have a statement. So one of the things that I learned early on with Toastmasters, and you talk about tools, is that some of the tools I had already, I just wasn't employing them. And particularly the outline for our speeches or outline for work, I just wasn't using it. And then
Ron,
the other,
Ron is absolutely right. 99% of the stuff we already know. We know we need on contact. We know we need an opening, but we don't practice it. And Toastmasters gives us that practice.
right. And then the other part with the other tool that I got from Toastmasters is when our leadership books, in the first page or second page, it states for your vision, the ability to look ahead, think ahead, and plan ahead. And that's something that has taught me well to use in every aspect of my planning. Back to you.
Very good. Thank you very much. I want to say it has been a pleasure to lead this panel. And I want to thank everybody for participating. Rob, for your advice, and Rick for your information, and Clarisse, always a pleasure. And I want to say thank you very much. And what a great group of people.